We're really, really excited to help other people, be it the denominations, be it communities, be it pioneers and those community leaders, to find their song, the song that God is giving them, and to sing it loud and proud, and to see where God's going.
Welcome to the Fresh Expressions Podcast, Season 6. I'm your host, Heather Jalad. I'm a pastor and cultivator of Fresh Expressions, new faith communities that strive to reach new people in unexpected places. In Season 6, we're diving into discipleship, exploring what it means to follow Jesus and share Jesus in our everyday lives, and how churches can cultivate a culture of discipleship that is more than curriculum within their communities. Along the way, we'll be talking with church leaders and practitioners in the Fresh Expressions movement about the crisis of discipleship the church is navigating. We hope you will love this episode. And if you've benefited from this podcast, can you help us spread the word? Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or just share your favorite episode with a friend or colleague or on social media. Now, let's start the conversation. Well, welcome back to the Fresh Expressions Podcast, Season 6. It is good to be with you again, and I am happy to be here with a new friend and colleague from across the pond, Mark Robinson. I'll have him introduce himself in just a moment, but this season we're talking about discipleship, and this is not unfamiliar with our colleagues certainly across the pond, but I started listening to the Fresh Expressions podcast in the UK a little over a year ago now, the Mission Shaped podcast, and I just so much appreciated the stories they were telling, the practitioners that they were having conversation with, and how this was really shaping the church in the UK as well. And so I thought I would invite my counterpart in the UK to come and have a conversation with us. And so, Mark, welcome to the conversation. Hi. It's so good to have you.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
I really appreciate your time and coordinating this across all the time zones. Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell everybody, like, how did you get involved in this movement? Like, how did you come to be a part of this?
Well, yeah. So my name is Mark Robinson, and I head up communications here in the UK for the Fresh Expressions in the UK. My journey, wow, yeah. How far do you want to go back? I'll give you the things. All the things. Well, in so I was born and raised in Ireland, in Dublin.
Okay.
And I grew up in a charismatic Catholic family, which is sometimes rare for people to hear, but we would go to Catholic Mass, and my dad would play the guitar, and we'd do worship songs and all that sort of stuff. And we were later on involved in a very sort of charismatic community of people, which was great stuff. So my upbringing was very much rooted in faith. Then in the mid-90s, me and my parents moved here to the UK. And it was around then that I started to sort of lose my faith. I was 16 at the time, so typical kind of time, sort of exploring my own head and my own beliefs and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And I think part of my upbringing was one that I wasn't. We weren't brought up on sort of the idea of critical thinking, as many of our generation really weren't. It just wasn't necessarily a thing culturally that people really did. And so it wasn't even a case that I was questioning my faith. I just got to a stage where I just didn't really care about faith. Mm-hmm. I went off to university, and there were much more interesting things like alcohol and girls that just took my time, and riding my bike. So I was like that typical journey off to uni and all that sort of stuff. And I spent about 10 years having no faith whatsoever. And then after that period, I found myself in a very miserable time of my life. and searching. During those 10 years, I had questioned, I had researched. I dated a girl who was of Hindu faith, and that raised a lot of questions for me about that typical thing. Well, how can her faith be right? How can mine not? All that sort of stuff. Anyway, long story short, during that 10-year period, I did a lot of searching of different faiths, and studied a little bit about all sorts of different things. But the Christian faith was what made the most sense. I did an Alpha course. I returned to faith towards the end of that Alpha course, and ended up settling down. It was my wife actually was the one leading the Alpha course.
Okay.
And so we met on that Alpha course, and then some months after started dating, and the rest is history. That's all 18 years ago now or so. And the reason why this is important, and why I bring us to the Alpha course, is the church that I then joined is a lovely church called Oak Tree in Acton, West London. And I remember my wife inviting me to church for the first time as we were coming to the end of Alpha, and her persuasion was, come to church, I'll introduce you to, you can come for a pint in the pub afterwards, and I'll introduce you to loads of hot women. So I was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
True to form of my university days. I had matured a little bit. Yeah. But it was the style of church. So the Oak Tree is an Anglican church, but it's very, very low Anglican. So at the time they were meeting in School Hall, and there was really great worship, but it felt like, when I was there, it felt like what I'd thought church always should be. It was a real homecoming of just sort of like, oh, this is what it should be.
Yeah. And
it shifted my perspective completely on how church works.
Wow.
And so, as you can imagine, post doing an Alpha course and coming back to faith, went on this journey. God turned my life upside down and completely undid me in so many ways. I went and worked for a large UK development charity called Tear Fund for a year, and that absolutely broke me. Having been one who never voted and didn't really think much beyond my own nose, working there just completely transformed a lot of stuff on top of all the faith transformation. And professionally, my background has been media. I'm sort of segueing slightly to get these two to meet.
Yeah.
So when I was at university, I studied media stuff and film stuff, and post-university, I did follow through on that. So worked in film and video post-production. So my key skill is as a video editor, which is partly why I got involved in doing the Mission Shape podcast.
Okay.
Editing is a natural skill set of mine. And I did all sorts of production stuff. So most of my career has been freelance. And so I've done everything in the freelance world of production, from one-man shooter to being working with production teams and directing and all the works. And so being someone who worked in media on a production side and also in charity third sector, mostly in the Christian sector, most of my career has been directed towards charity communications in Christian circles. Alongside all of this, so I joined the Fresh Expressions team 2.5 years ago. Okay. And that has been alongside my wife's journey. My wife is coming to the end of her curacy. So if you're unfamiliar with the term curacy, she is a trainee vicar in the Church of England. Okay. And so we've been through her training at theological college or seminary. And in the Church of England, once you do that sort of theological study, you then you become a curate. And so you do 3 to 4 years of working in a parish church under a vicar, and learn how to do all the stuff, like how do you do communion, how do you do weddings, how do you do baptisms, right, and all the rest. So when she finished her theological training and we were assigned this curacy post in London, I was looking for a different job. And it was like the week before we moved, I saw the post for the Fresh Expressions job. And while I hadn't been directly involved with Fresh Expressions, we were very familiar with Fresh Expressions.
Yes.
My wife is I would say she's in denial that she's a pioneer. She's a pioneer in her bones, but she doesn't like the idea of being a pioneer. And so that's sort of our direction and how we've come to where we are. Okay. So finding myself working with the Fresh Expressions team has been a huge blessing, because it's very much God was in it, and even from the details of doing the interview and all sorts, God has been very much prophetically been at the center of all of it. So while sometimes I have these moments where I feel a bit fraudulent because I'm not necessarily a pioneer exactly myself. Yes. My wife is, and God's very much been clear in putting us where we are at this time. So yeah, that's my journey.
Yeah, no, that's great. Talk about the providential God and God's hand being in the midst of all of this. And I had no idea that your wife was on this journey with you. So that's amazing. You mentioned the Church of England, and we're talking about discipleship, and I know the Church of England has done a lot of work around fruitfulness and discipleship, and that they've done this. They're investing a lot in really some way of measuring fruitfulness in discipleship. So I just wanted to touch upon that.
Sure, yeah.
In this fruitfulness framework research that they're doing. Could you just say a little bit about that? I know you're not involved in that necessarily, but could you just say a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's been a really, really great piece of work, and an essential piece of work, and also I think a piece of work that needs to continue and even develop further. So we got involved with it last year when they were doing I think it was their second round of research. Mm-hmm. And because we have access to so many pioneers, we promoted it a lot. And my understanding is it was developed by the Greenhouse team in the Church of England. And we work a lot with the Greenhouse team in the Church of England, with a lot of other projects. But historically, I think one of the problems for the Fresh Expressions movement here in the UK, and I suspect you may have the same issues in the US, is it can be really difficult to measure the success of a fresh expression.
The quote-unquote success, yeah.
Exactly. We always refer to the way that the church tends to measure things by the bums on seats, the numbers of bums on seats.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to do when you're not counting those numbers, and when you're actively trying to avoid counting the numbers, because just that act in itself can taint how you approach stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that there are some Fresh Expressions and some communities that can do that and do that freely, of course. Mm-hmm. But there are some environments where if you start counting numbers, that might start making the people that you're ministering to get a bit nervous. And I think we've always acknowledged that. But at the same time, with that comes this sometimes a potential for a lack of accountability. Or even just a really difficult way to say, hey, this is what's happening. And when the yardstick for the last 2,000 years has been, or as long as the church has been alive, is how many people are coming to the building.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's always going to be there, for the for most of the established denominations, and that's okay. But measuring that differently, and so the Fruitfulness Framework is more about measuring the discipleship. And because even in a large church, you can have hundreds of people come through your doors, but are their lives being transformed by the power of the Spirit is the big question.
It's all about the transformation. Yeah, it's all about the transformation, and how. What does transformation look like, and how do you measure that versus like you said, counting people starts to feel like people are projects, and nobody wants to be your project.
Exactly.
Nobody wants, and when we start counting how many people are there, does that necessarily mean that their lives are being transformed? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah. So
and I think we also recognize the thing of, with some sometimes a fresh expression, even in how it works, sometimes there are fresh expressions of church that are seasonal. They might only exist for a very brief period of time and minister to a very brief period or bunch of people, but those people could be very significant in the future of the church. We talk about this a lot, of just saying we can't dare to know how much God is working, right. and where the Spirit is moving, it can be. Yes, we want to be accountability, and everyone wants to be able to say, yes, this is successful. But actually, there's stuff going on all the time that we have no idea about. And so we are very much open-handed about that and give it a light touch for us here. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, just your experience, sharing your experience in Alpha, right? It was life-changing, and you continue to grow and change over time. I mean, that is the journey of a follower of Jesus, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I wonder if you could share. I mean, like I said, you've had so many wonderful conversations on the podcast. I would like to hear, first of all, like, are you finding your guests? Are they finding you? Like, how are you finding them, first of all? And then like, what have been some of your favorites? And then, dare I ask, like, what have been some of your hardest conversations? I mean, I don't know if any of your listeners are going to be listening to this, so maybe it's okay, but if you tell me.
Thankfully, no one's being like an absolute pain to work with. Everyone, everyone I've had the pleasure of chatting to has been a pleasure to talk to. I think because part of the approach is it's such a privilege to hear these stories and to share these stories. Gosh, what are some of my favorite stories? That's so difficult, because each of the stories that we share, they're so unique.
Yes, they are.
Well, let me go back for a second to how we accumulate the stories and that stuff.
Yeah.
So I recognise that in the UK, the movement here in the UK is just because of geography and population, it's much smaller. So it's very interconnected. And so most of the time, with a lot of the stories, our approach was we knew the stories were out there. And we did do a few things in our newsletter saying, if you've got a story, come and connect with us. And maybe it's a British thing, I don't know. But I found that I was getting nothing back from people when I was just in the email, sort of cold calling.
It's not just a British thing. No, I'll.
Yeah. I think people need to be invited and have an individual invite. And we got a few little bites and nibbles for some interesting anecdotal stuff, which we're sort of toying around with, sort of trying to put into potentially a single episode. But for some of the deeper stories, I think a lot of people tend to go like, oh, my story is not that important. And I'm always like, no, it vitally is, because, for us, and as the charity here, our primary focus is pioneers. And I'm always having to remind the team and our leadership community about that. It's our beneficiaries are not those who are going to be hearing the word of Jesus. It's our beneficiaries who will be telling those people. Sometimes we forget that link. So everything that we have to do has to inspire and equip those people, those pioneers. And so
that's right. We
know that storytelling is always inspiring, and hearing people's stories is inspiring. And that person's story who's out way over there on their own doing something, they may feel that their story is insignificant, but actually sometimes those stories that feel insignificant can be the most powerful stories.
That's right.
And indeed some of the episodes we have, which are more about people who are in between things. And I know we love to talk about liminal spaces and liminality in this movement, both here and over there.
Right.
But I think we do see that God seems to do lots of work in the liminal space.
Absolutely.
And seeing God work where people have been doing a fresh expression, that has come to an end. They're waiting to hear from God where the next thing is happening. There's some really interesting stuff that happens there. And that is I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about this stuff and talking about it.
Hey, the people of God spent 40 years in the desert, in the wilderness for a reason. I mean,
exactly. So yeah, it went on. Most of the stories that we ended up getting, I ended up using sort of the network that we have of just saying, hey, started with our board and our leadership community and saying, who are the people you know that have a great story, and can you go and ask them, would they be willing to share the story? And that's how it started. And now that's becoming a bit more free in people willing to share their stories because they're seeing that there's interest. If I'm really honest, I'm hitting a bit of a bottleneck because we're quite under-resourced. You know, I'm the comms guy, and I'm doing all the comms because we're quite a small team, and we're trying to expand our podcast a little bit into exploring some more different streams of the podcast.
Okay.
So we will be seeing more stories, but we'll be seeing some other things, and there might be a few less stories than the Ribbon has had to date. But that said, I think I've got like 5 stories in the bag coming.
Nice.
So watch this space.
Good stuff.
But yeah, so it's very much relational. When it comes to the favorite stories now, I think that the 2 that stand out. Oh gosh, that's even. Yeah.
It's hard.
Oh, it is. Oh gosh, it's so hard. It's so hard. Linda Maslin and her wrestling with the community is probably our most popular episode, and I think for a reason. And it's so good because it's very apt for the British culture as well. So she runs a very much regular sort of Anglican church, charismatic evangelical Anglican church, and on Sunday they do Sunday services. It looks like a regular church. It's a successful church. A lot of people going there. On Saturday, they do wrestling church.
Wow.
So this is our equivalent of like WWE wrestling,
yes.
That kind of thing. So but it's very much the amateur end of it. With British culture and the Midlands of the UK culture, which is you really cannot take yourself too seriously in that part of the country. And where wrestling like that is based around stories, it's good and evil and all this. And the big problem they have is all of the people in their stories end up getting redeemed. So they keep on having to create new characters because they're weaving the Bible stories into their wrestling. And when we did that podcast, this was last year when I interviewed Linda, that weekend they were about to have a baptism service, and they were having more people getting baptized through wrestling church than through the regular church, and that was quite telling, you know. But most of those people in the wrestling church would not dare set foot inside of the other church.
Yeah.
But that was okay because wrestling church, again, is their church, and it's going so beautifully. So it's a brilliant story, and it's bonkers.
That is totally bonkers.
Absolutely
How
bonkers.
on earth did she start this? Like, what was the precipitating event? Was there like a gym there? Like, how did this get started? Do you know?
I can't remember the exact details. I know it was to do with the venue and the location and being invited in, and that's one of her key points about why it was successful and why she has been successful in it. Because I mean, she's from a corporate background, you know, and would not have any interest, and yet now she has her own wrestling persona herself.
She became the convener of a wrestling church. Okay.
But the key she talks about is the fact that she was invited into that community.
Yeah.
Often, sometimes, I think we recognize that within church planting and pioneering and this, there's sort of this attitude that can be very, what's the word? I can't think of the word. I can't think of the word. I'm getting tired. It's the afternoon. But yeah, this attitude of just going in and taking over and doing what we do, and we're going to do church how we want to do it.
Right.
That can be incredibly disingenuous to those communities.
Absolutely.
And so recognizing that if you are in a position where you get invited into a community and
That's
you are a guest in that community, and you may well become part of that community, but that's a really important aspect to think about. But yeah, so that's sort of the dramatic story.
It's the difference between colonization and indigenization.
That's the word. Colonialism was the word. I couldn't find there. Thank you.
This is the American saying this to the Brit.
Well, and even
How
there,
ironic.
remember, it's the Irishman as well. So it's a double whammy.
Oh my word!
To talk about like something else, there's all sorts of these different ones. Like there's David Sims, who does TikTok Church, and his TikTok Church has been growing. I was watching him the other night. It's silly, it's awkward. He knows that he's one of the biggest dorks on the planet, but he just goes with it, and people love him. And he talks about that himself. He's like, I know it's not brilliant. I know the production is terrible, but he's just responding to what God is doing. Then there's, I think about Martin, an old friend of mine, a guy called Martin, who I used to work with in that charity I mentioned earlier. And his community, which has been going since the 80s, Asylum, and it's a bunch of punks and metalheads. And they meet.
I listened to that episode, yes.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where established church look at that and I think are terrified by the idea because it just shouldn't work. And yet it does, and people are, it's a very slow, very, very slow model. It's not instant.
Right.
There's some of those people that Martin's been talking to for like 20 years, 20, 30 years, and they haven't made a commitment yet, but they're far more open than they were. And again, it's that sort of fighting that sort of colonial aspect of like, well, we must go for conversions. But then on the other end, again, it would be stories like Rachel's or Rachel Oatridge or Lynn Clifton, who, again, those people who are in between things and they're not quite sure. I think Lynn's story is very much, they went down, they started something, I think it was just pre-COVID. And obviously that story of COVID, so common, decimated what they were doing.
Right.
And now Lynn is in a place at the moment of just listening to God and doing little bits and just testing the water. Still feels that she should be where she's at. And the community that supports her are supporting her and listening to that and trusting that she's hearing from God in the right way. Because I think most people appreciate that this is a prophetic ministry. It's the only way it works. But there's something beautiful in that because, again, she said herself that it would be easy just to sort of go back to something more established.
That's right. Yeah.
And then show the success and say, hey, look at me, I've done this stuff. But that's not what it's about. It's about listening to God and saying, hey. So all of these different episodes, I think the common thread, the thing that I think binds them together rather is the difference and the variety. Because I'm so keen that people who listen to our podcast, I always say at the end, I'll sort of direct a message towards people at the end and asking our guests what they would say to people who are thinking of that God might be calling them to do something. And so what would the guests say to them? Because it's such an important question. And there's always common threads like, just give it a go. Just trust in God. Come alongside other people who are doing it and just go for it. Because God won't let you down. He doesn't let you down with these kind of things.
Yes, just give it a go. Just try. Like I believe God honors that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to lose? Because at the end of the day, you're going to learn something about yourself. You're going to learn something about God. You're going to learn something about the community. Mm-hmm. And it might actually change the world.
Oh, it will. It might only be for one person, but surely
That's
it's worth
right.
it.
It will definitely change you. It will
Oh, yeah.
definitely change you. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. So, Mark, you really kind of have an overview of what's happening in the movement, and certainly, in a number of, this is multi-denominational, ecumenical, non-denominational. I mean, same thing here in the U.S. as well. Not just one denomination involved in this movement, but you kind of have your finger on the pulse. What is really giving you hope right now in the movement in the UK? I mean, you guys you say you're smaller, but you're certainly deeper. You've been a part. The UK was the birthplace of this movement. You've been there a lot longer. What's giving you hope?
I think, we're really excited for 2025. Over the last few years, as a team, we've been really pushing into where God is working and where God is moving. Sometimes, when I first joined, it felt a little like the charity was floundering a little bit and trying to figure out what direction we were traveling in, and recognizing what our reputation was in the wider church. And I think we've sort of, the journey we've been on the last few years, which feeds into this next year, is we realize we've been around for over 20 years. And in that, there's kind of this attitude that when you get to your 20s, you're coming of age, and you're starting to think for yourself. And so we had the support of all the major denominations, and so we relinquished some of that support, and have been on this journey of finding ourselves. And especially in the last year, we talk about singing our own song, finding our own song, and singing our own song. But along with that journey is, recognizing that, most 20-year-olds think they know a lot, but we all know that they don't. And it's those really wise 20-year-olds are the ones that sort of say, I don't know everything, but I'm willing to learn. But I have learned some stuff. So we've been going through this process of looking back and say, we've got this arsenal of knowledge and experience that is really valuable to the church of the future.
Yeah.
And we're really, really excited to help other people, be it the denominations, be it communities, be it pioneers and those community leaders, to find their song, the song that God is giving them, and to sing it loud and proud, and to see where God's going. Because it's we don't want to be so arrogant as to think we have it all worked out, but I think we also appreciate that we've been slightly domesticated, and the Spirit is wild.
Wow,
the Spirit is very wild, and we can't pretend to know exactly what God is doing. We have to be finding where the Spirit is blowing and follow that, or be blown along by it, or whatever metaphors. We love metaphors,
yes,
and
we do.
There's many mixed ones that go in there, but I think we're hugely excited about what direction that's taking us this year, and helping people to sing their own song. And part of that is deeper discipleship, I think, and helping people develop models that help models that do deeper discipleship in ways that aren't conventional, because most of the fresh expression communities that we have are not regular things, and the usual models don't work. Like even something like Alpha won't necessarily work in certain contexts. So what are the different things? And that's really exciting.
No, that's good. That's so helpful. I mean, I know when I first reached out to you, I was like, what would you tell your 12-year-old self? Because essentially we're preteens. You're in your 20s. We're preteens here in the U.S. as far as this movement is concerned. And I think that's a really helpful way to look at this. I mean, if, the older you get, the more rigid you can become in your ways, right? And the more institutionalized you can become. And I think it's a good it's a good caveat, right? As you get more, as you progress more, to hold on loosely to what it is that you're about, and to continue to, as you said, remember that the Holy Spirit is wild and is constantly moving, and then we need to be attentive to that and discerning, so that we don't become so rigid or tied down into being a particular way, and also being attentive to the multitude of expressions of the church and to the context in which the church exists, and how the Spirit is moving and expressing the different forms of church. So thank you. That's very, very helpful, and something that we all need to be attentive to as the movement continues to move in all of the places it is moving in the world, not only here in the States, but also in the UK, but and on other continents as well. Thank you. Mark, is there anything that I haven't asked you that maybe I should be asking you, or anything you haven't said that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think there's only one burning thing, which I know I always want to, whenever I talk to people about fresh expressions, and forgive me if this is preaching to the choir, but contextual mission. You know, part of our 20-year journey has been banging this drum in the UK about contextual mission, mission. And we kind of realize that actually most of the denominations are now listening. They've got it. We still have to keep banging the drum. But even now, when we think in a post, it feels like we're keep on repeating ourselves, but the post-COVID world, contextual mission is more important than ever.
That's right.
There are so many opportunities. And I think on one of your previous episodes, I was hearing Alan Hirsch talking about the swathes of people who are leaving the church because they have no trust in the institutions, but they love Jesus. You know, there's a huge amount of opportunity to be found in those places, but it has to be contextual.
It's a world of opportunities, right? Yeah, we can't have this scarcity mentality. The opportunities are abundant, to be sure. Thank you.
Indeed.
Mark, thank you. I hope we get to do this again sometime in the future. And sure. I would love for you to pray for our listeners to close out the conversation. Would you do that?
Oh, that would be an absolute pleasure. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Father God, thank you that you are a gracious God. Thank you that you are generous. Lord, I thank you that you delight in the fact that you delight in us as individuals, and that you love us. And Father, I also thank you for the opportunities that we have to work alongside you. We know that you don't need us for any of this, but you want to do this with us. And Father, I want to pray for anyone who's listening to this who might be inspired by some of this stuff or other episodes. I pray, Lord, that you would just touch their hearts and let them know that, if they're having a niggle, that it's probably you saying, just do it. And if that's scary, that's probably the right place to be. But Lord, I pray that you would surround those people with the right people, put the right people in their way, and would there be conversations that come? Would there be interactions? Would there be meetings? Would your wonderful serendipitous nature by your Spirit be working through the US? And Father God, I pray that, finally, that through all of this work, that some people who don't yet know you would come to know your amazing love. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Fresh Expressions is a worldwide movement of everyday missionaries who want to see churches thrive in the places we live, eat, work, and play by leveraging the creativity and endurance of the inherited church. To learn a simple 5-phase process for starting a new expression of church, go to freshexpressions.com/how to start. Want to learn more from the Fresh Expressions team? Head over to freshexpressions.com/training to learn ways we can work together to provide coaching, training, and inspiration for your church or organization. Jump into our monthly trail marker check-ins, the Pioneer Cohort, or launching this spring for your Fresh Expressions team, the Team Cultivator. You can also get more resources like this on FX Connect, an online community full of other church leaders passionate about reaching new people in new places. Access our entire library of practical and inspiring training materials and connect with other church leaders at fxconnectus.org. Season 6 of the Fresh Expressions podcast is hosted by me, Heather Jalad. It's edited by Joel Limbaum and produced by Jeanette Statz and Kathleen Blackie. Our senior director is Shannon Kaiser. If you've learned something or been encouraged by this podcast, please help us spread the word. You can give us a review on Apple Music or Spotify and share this episode on social media. Now may God bless you in your work for the kingdom.